that didn't, and they all cared about me. And I think that's the problem. We've taken the part out of the school districts that we can actually care about students. My mother taught in St. Louis public schools for over 30 years, and like Senator Wilson said, when my mother retired, she never would go back. And part of it was because of the focus that we've taken off of education and we put on statistics. So we're looking at numbers. We're not going around and saying, what is it that these kids need to survive? We're saying, what numbers do we need to divide these schools and to build these schools or to break down these schools and put more kids in a room? So when I came out and I went to a school and we said 21 kids in a classroom was too many, and now I go around in the classroom in Jeff City and there's 30, how can a kid that has a special need that has not been identified, how can you learn in a school or in a classroom where there's 27 or 28 other kids that either look like you or don't? The teacher does not have time, not that they don't care. How do I have time to care for you? So it's not really, are we transferring, are we desegregating, or any of those things? Are we giving people the things that they need to help these kids survive? The other thing that we talk about even in our churches is this fishbowl mentality. So how many of our teachers actually live in the city? How many of them are going back? Are you driving in to work, teaching, and leaving? Because if that's what we're doing, we don't care about our kids. My mother did not leave St. Louis Public Schools or even the area until we were fully grown because she wanted to make sure that the people that she taught looked like her. Part of it is because my mother was a great educator. My grandmother was also a teacher. But if we take our resources and we transfer the teachers to the Clayton school districts and we go to the Rittner school districts and we go to these other school districts, now we have the mentality of those who cannot teach in our children because those who can teach have left us. I currently work for the state of Missouri. I do try my best to go back. I give a challenge out to everyone here that is of African American descent. Go back to these schools, even if you are not a product of St. Louis Public Schools or Normandy or Wellston. Go in and let these students see what we are doing. Let them understand that there are people that are talking about them at a table. Brian, one of the youngest people in here, in my assumption. Did we bring them to the table? Are we asking them what do they need? Where are their problems? What are their concerns? Do the teachers really care about them? Are the teachers asking you how your day is? And we were sitting here talking, if you've never come from a single parent home, if your mother has never worked 2 jobs, you cannot understand what I was going through as a child. So yeah, my mother may not have been able to come to parent-teachers conference because she was handling a parent-teachers conference for someone else's kids. So sometimes it's not that our parents don't care. If I work 2 jobs, and the school has parent-teachers conference from 9 to 3, I cannot go. So we have to make sure that the things are available for our children. We have to make sure that we're not sitting around talking about what the school district is doing. What are we doing as a community? What are we doing as the church? Our churches are failing, which means our school districts are failing. And when we can come in as the church and get together and say, what do we need to succeed? These school districts would not pass, and neither would anything else. And I'm sorry for my soapbox, but it's just sitting here and listening to people saying, it's not the kids, it's not the teachers, it's what are we doing as a community to come back and give the support that we need.
That's not all churches now.
No, you're correct about that. My name is Marisha Wilson Chamberlain. I happen to be Senator Wilson's daughter, and I actually work in the St. Paul school districts in Minneapolis as a child therapist. And one of the things that I used to fuss at a lot of the parents of kids that my kids grew up with about their involvement and follow through with what's going on at school and help, being a part of educating their kids. And one of the things that I have noticed over the past couple of years in working in the school district is not only do the parents, and many of them do have 2 jobs, but we've got, the school district has allowed for parent-teacher conferences outside of those regular ones, but they don't participate. But the other thing is that many of these kids are, you talked about kids being in 3 different school districts in 1 year. So I was working with a family that at the beginning of the school year they were in the school, they left at Thanksgiving, moved to South Carolina, came back January, the first part of February. By Easter, they were in a different school in the same St. Paul School District. They returned in May, and school was out in June. Now, mind you, the reason they moved each time was because the mother became homeless because of her violent behavior. So you've got kids who have no idea where they're sleeping tonight, if they're going to have food in the morning. They are listening to battles outside their bedroom walls, and you expect them to come to school at 6 o'clock in the morning and function?
Yes.
Believe me, it is not something that's even possible for these kids.
I think, thank you. This young lady right here, I'm trying to make sure. Would you look at the young lady and then in the back? Yes.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. My name is Yvonne Woods, and I work with the 100 Missouri Miles Initiative. And if you would just follow me for just a second. I want to say, first of all, to you, I'm sitting here in part because of you, besides just the obvious legacy, but my parents were in school when Brown versus the board came down. Based on my age, my parents are kind of old to be my parents, but they are my parents, I promise. So my parents went to segregated schools until that decision came down. So part of how I was raised in my educational perspective comes from their experiences in that situation, in that time, and a huge focus was put on education in our household. Both of my parents are also educators. My father grew up to be a college administrator. My mother was a special education teacher for about 30 years. So believe me when I say I really do place a value on education. And I heard what you said about it seems like white students can function well in racially isolated situations where our black kids aren't. And you could probably speak better to this than me, Senator Chappelle-Nadal, but I'm a non-traditional college student. I went back to college at age 26, and one of my jobs at Lincoln was they call it SI, but it's essentially a TA, a teacher's assistant. And I would teach the students outside of the classroom hours, college students aged 18 to 22. And when I tell you, most of those students had struggles or didn't have an emphasis on education, black or white, in my head it's about an economic situation, because the white students came from rural areas and the black students came from urban areas, and both of them struggled with education regardless of their race. And what I noticed was it's the economic situation we come from, not just, and I hear what you're saying about parents, and I don't have kids so I can't speak to that, but my question is, because you challenged us at the beginning to think legislatively or policy-wise, if people aren't going to stand up and yell about education, how do we then get them to maybe stand up and yell about their financial situation and the resources that are not in their community, the jobs that are not there to raise their property values, to get the better taxes, to get the better schools? How do we get them to understand all these things are interconnected? Because we can yell about education till we're blue purple in the face, but you started out by saying, if I'm a child and my house is falling down and I can't walk to school because my sidewalks are crumbling, then I get to school and my teacher doesn't care because she just drove in from whatever the suburb is. Kids are perceptive, and so are the parents. The parents then grew up in a system, if they're in the same neighborhood, then that was their situation as well, and education didn't help them in their minds. We're talking about these parents are going through, and these parents, aren't the same type of parents that they used to be. But if they grew up in the same situation their child did, in their minds, education doesn't help them, so why should they come to your school board meeting?
Thank you. She was a former intern, by the way.